Hi, and welcome back to the Burnout Recovery Club for Moms. I'm very excited to have someone with me that has been able to be such a nice person to bounce ideas about women and ADHD. Her name is Ruth. She's got a occupational therapy practice. She's a mom of two, and she loves running, which I don't. So you'll have to tell us more about that. Hi. My name is Michelle, and I am passionate about helping overwhelmed and exhausted moms recover from and manage burnout. They say it takes a village to raise a child, and it's time for you to join our mom tribe. Say goodbye to mom guilt and hello to self-care, self-love, and self-acceptance. This is the Burnout Recovery Club.
So recently I started gymming and going back to gym. It was something that I did at varsity, and I've always been sort of quite an active person. And it was more of a challenge to pick up a habit that got me back into the gym. And I'm now going, I think, 3 times a week consistently. And it's really changed how I do things, and the exercises honestly changed how I've managed my day-to-day life. I've also met a lovely group of ladies there um, who are super supportive, and just through engaging with them, like the one lady, she's run the Comrades, so she has encouraged me to come join her running group. And it's just a super supportive group of ladies.
That's awesome. And what kind of thing are you enjoying about this specific gym session? What are you focusing on?
It's a personal training class called the Lift Club.
Okay.
So you use barbells and dumbbells and kettlebells. And I have really enjoyed the challenge of lifting heavy weights and being engaged in that. From a woman's perspective, I understand that older, you lose quite a bit of muscle mass. So
Yeah.
when you are sort of in your life, you have to start working really hard to build that.
We've reached that age where you're exercising to avoid injury and mobility, and to be able to bend down and get up off the floor, and well, maybe not you, but I have.
Oh no, I'm there.
Okay, awesome. You also have, through your practice, had a special interest in women and ADHD. Why don't we chat a little bit about that? And specifically, I know if you're comfortable chatting about your own diagnosis and how you got there. Maybe we could start with
Yeah,
that.
I'd love to share that. So actually, you were the catalyst. um, Making the appointment and going and getting a diagnosis. Um, Although it did take a little bit longer after we had our chats and things. um, so I think after attending a few sessions with you, Michelle, I think your son was going through the process of getting diagnosed.
Yeah.
And there were just a whole bunch of red flags for you that
Yeah.
you saw in me. And I remember you didn't say anything. You just sent me a link to a podcast, and you were like, I think you need to listen to this.
Which is
And I
great
remember,
because I'm not allowed to diagnose, but I think I was just so completely blown away by that same podcast. And it was the Tracy Otsuka one, right?
yeah,
An interview with her and Jenna Kutcher. And that changed my life. And I think I've shared it like 100 times. Now I haven't got a diagnosis, but I know that I have ADHD myself. And I think that was one of the stepping stones through my son's diagnosis to get my own diagnosis. But yes, carry on telling us about yours, because, I've gone on a tangent with my
what we
excitement.
do.
Yeah.
So basically, like, you had shared that podcast, and I kept on going to the next one and to the next one. And I actually sent a couple of podcasts to my family group and said, guys, if you want to understand who I am and understand things and like how I see the world, listen to this. this is why I'm always late, and this is why I struggle to do the things, and this is why things are never on time. And that sort of fell on deaf ears a little bit. And then it took me a while to pluck up the courage to phone and make the appointment with the psychiatrist. And I think like there is shame and worry, and something that I have experienced previously with doctors is you go there thinking that you might get a diagnosis, and then you almost like medically gaslit to make you feel like, actually, hang on, no, you don't know what you're talking about. And I remember having a chat to my psychologist around the same time as I was seeing you. And she was like, oh, no, I don't think it's ADHD. And then you start doubting.
Yeah.
And I got to a point, and it was just after COVID, where I was not coping. And I said to my husband, listen, I'm making the appointment. So I picked up the phone and phoned the psychiatrist. And I think there was about a 4-month wait.
Wow.
So I asked them to put me on a cancellation list, and they did. And I actually was involved in a little bit of an accident on the trampoline, and I hurt my ankle quite badly. And if I hadn't have done that, when the cancellation came through, I wouldn't have been able to accept the cancellation appointment, and I would have had to wait another 2 months for my original appointment.
Because as moms, we don't prioritize ourselves. So,
Well, moms and business owners, right?
Yes.
And I then went and had the appointment, and in true ADHD fashion, I arrived on time, but my forms weren't filled in. And I thought that it would take me 10 minutes to fill in the forms, and it took me half an hour. And I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, if this is not like raging ADHD, I don't know what else you need to know. We sat down in his consultation room, and I think we spoke for 2.5 hours. And it was the most freeing experience I've ever had. And like even in therapy, even at work, I have never sort of forced someone to get a diagnosis. I've always come from a point of view where we treat the person, not the diagnosis necessarily.
Yeah.
And after my experience with getting a diagnosis, it removed part of the shame of, these are the things that I'm struggling with, or these are the things that I can't do. And it changed it from being sort of a Ruth problem to, this is how my brain works, and it's not actually a me problem. It's
Yes.
an
Yes.
And it's not a me fault. It's not a fault that I have. It's a different way for my brain to work, and I learn different skills, or I to become more aware, and learn the things so that I can function.
Yeah.
So, like, that was a huge flip and change for me, and
Did you feel a huge sense of relief?
I remember walking out of the doctor's office and thinking, I've blamed myself all these years, and it's not me. And like, it was, I think that the whole experience of getting a diagnosis and getting medication and getting help, there were times where I was like, it was almost like a relief that it wasn't a me problem. But then there were also times where I thought to myself, sure, if I had have got a diagnosis sooner, or if someone had seen these things in me sooner, like, what could I have prevented? The shame and the problems or the events that I had missed, things that I had missed out on because I didn't get there on time, or I didn't respond on time, or I've missed an email, or, so like the missed opportunities that come from the disorganization that comes.
And I don't think you're alone with feeling that way. The statistics are very clear that women don't often get diagnosed. It's usually the young boy that is hyperactive, specifically at school. That's the person that actually gets diagnosed. The woman in ADHD often looks different, and therefore it isn't studied, and we don't get it. But I have noticed more and more scientific data coming through that the people that are getting diagnosed are, specifically women that are getting diagnosed, are heading into changes like perimenopause or menopause, and then also that group of girls that are in puberty. So when we're having those hormonal shifts, it seems like that's when we can mask and mask and mask and then get to a point where we can't mask anymore. Do you think you masked for a while and that's you kind of maybe COVID was your breaking point, that you finally realized you couldn't just push through anymore?
I do think so. Like, I think growing up, I was definitely a lot more emotionally sensitive and like very emotionally reactive. I remember my husband went to ask for my hand in marriage from my dad. And my dad turned to him and he said, "You do know what you're getting yourself into,"
No.
because I am a sensitive person, and
Yeah.
I feel all the feelings and
Yeah.
I'm able to sort of filter it. So if I'm having a bad day, you'll know I'm having a bad day because my face will tell you and my whole body will tell you and my mood will tell you and I don't have to say a word. So like we always joke about that now, but I think it's also like, think growing up, I was quite misunderstood.
Hmm.
Because I was this hypersensitive person and I was someone who was oversharing and like I was someone who was
And then
disorganized.
overthinking, oversharing, and
Well,
then overthinking,
and then
and
like
replaying stories in your head and wondering if those were the right things to say. It's a lot of a cognitive load of completely doubting yourself and always wondering, did you share too much? Did you not? Did you say the right thing? Did you not? And I didn't realize that some people don't have that. I thought that
yes,
was normal. It's like, it's exhausting, but doesn't everyone see the world this way? No, Ruth, it's you and I.
and I think that that is that is also like a little bit of a loneliness that
Hmm.
comes with it. Where and I was thinking about coming into this interview. I was thinking about like what is the difference between someone with ADHD and someone with that has a normal brain, if I can say it like that.
Neurotypical. Hmm.
And well, yeah. um, and I think that something that sets us apart is the day to day, everyday stuff takes so much energy to get it done because we are overthinking and because we are multiple tabs in our heads open at the same time and actually retracing our steps all the time because, oh
Yeah.
gosh, well, we saw the cup there and then we hang on and now the dishwasher's full and now I have to unpack the dishwasher before I can put this cup away. But the kettle's boiling because I actually wanted a cup of coffee, and like that is just exhausting. And other
And you
people
sit
don't live
down
that way.
without that cup of coffee.
Big glad that you actually wanted a cup of coffee.
Yeah. I think that's why a lot of, as a burnout coach for moms, I started noticing that many of my clients were diagnosed or undiagnosed, definitely neurodivergent in some way, and struggled with the load, the mental load, the physical load of being a mother in that like natural path of stereotypes that the mom does, the house load and a
Mm.
lot of the administration load of the family. It's something that's incredibly difficult for some of us. So when we have that as an additional load to doing a job and raising kids, it just becomes too much. And I started seeing a lot of that with many of my clients. Do you run a very typical, stereotypical house where you do a lot of do you pick up a lot of the load at home in a parental role?
I think I do, but my husband is also very involved. So I
Okay.
think where I was thinking about my burnout story. And
Yes.
I
Tell
think
me
that it's sort
more.
of I
Is there
think
just
it's
one?
oh, there's multiple. And this is what I was wanting to say. It's almost like it's like there's waves of burnout. I was trying to think back to sort of when it all started. And we struggled to fall pregnant with kids. And I think that that created quite an emotional burnout, like not what I'm experiencing as a mom, but it was like very taxing because this was something that we really wanted. And
Of
it was
course.
difficult to, fulfill our dreams, if I could say it like that.
Yeah.
So that created sort of like a bit of a burnout because we were like focusing on a target that we actually had no control over. And then I fell pregnant with Liz, and that was a dream pregnancy, and it was wonderful. And I then fell pregnant quite quickly after. Well, for me, it was quickly after. So Liz was a year old in the June, and I fell pregnant in July. So for my 30th, uh, you're pregnant, birthday. I think like it was quite a shock. And I think that was sort of the start of the first heavy burnout, but it was also some postpartum. So the more I look at it, I was breastfeeding and pregnant. I think I went into depression when I was actually pregnant. And then Bella was born. But when I was still pregnant, my dad got sick and was in hospital for 57 days in ICU alone.
Oh, wow.
And I think like that's huge emotional toll, but we had to be strong. And I remember around that time, I didn't want to harm my kids. I wanted an escape, and I didn't want to hurt myself. But I thought if I just dove into a wall and had I could have 2 weeks in hospital, which is like so.
You have to say that out loud to another person before you realize how serious that thought is, and how, when you're in it, it's so much harder to see how bad it is until you take a step out of it. Depression is so tricky to get. When you're in it, it's just so difficult to understand where you are and how to get out of it. But then once you are on the other side, you realize how bad it was.
Yeah. And like, I think I was in it for a long period of time because I remember, and like, I didn't know that that was what it was. And I mean, the doctor was supportive, but I don't actually think he asked enough questions to understand where I was at, you know?
Yeah.
And like Bella she wasn't a difficult child. So I thank my lucky stars for that. But
Mhm.
I remember being in that depression, and I remember saying to my mom, I can understand how a mom could shake her baby.
Mhm.
Previous to that, I could not understand it at all. Like, how could you do that to a child? But when you are not okay and you're in such a deep, dark hole, like, I could understand how you feel.
And what did you do to get out of that space? Do
So
you remember?
my mom and dad were quite supportive. So they contacted the optometrist that worked with me and basically said, listen, you are one of her closest friends. You need to check on her. And they contacted my psychologist. And I remember my psychologist checking in and sending me messages daily, like whether it was a quote or whether it was, just a, hi, how you doing? And I remember not even engaging in that. And that was her way, because she said to my folks, you can't actually, she can't phone me up and say, listen, I hear that you're having a hard time,
Yeah.
you know, um, because that's sort of overstepping. And that's as much as she could possibly do until
Mhm.
I came and made an appointment and asked for help. And I think, like, my husband is super supportive, but I think that he was going through his own things. And I remember phoning him and saying to him, listen, I can't do this anymore. And he got home at that evening and he said, listen, you phoned me 17 times today saying that you can't do this. I'm struggling myself and I'm trying to put it together. Like, you need to just do it. I had to return back to work sooner than trying to manage a new routine with Liz going to school and managing Bella and nannies and work and all the stuff. And like, part of me wanted to stay at home with Bella, but that couldn't happen. And we had sent Liz to school and she was very unhappy. And I remember her crying probably 4 out of 5 days of the week. And it
That's a
was
lot.
heavy. And I was
Especially
doing
for
the job.
someone who has all the feelings and feels all of that very strongly. Those are hard things to go through on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I was pitching up to work, but I was in tears, and like you can't be a therapist and be in tears all the time. Um, and then like things settled down or things changed because COVID happened. So that was 2019, then 2020, COVID happened, and my husband actually went into sort of a lockdown before South Africa went into a lockdown, because he works for an international bank and he was exposed to delegates who then returned home and they had tested positive for COVID.
Mm.
Whole load of momming was on me. And then COVID like upended that, where we weren't waking up at the crack of dawn to get ready and go to work. Think I think COVID came right time. I would have like had a complete meltdown. Well, we were melting down.
Forced the change though. It forced things to kind of
Mhm.
stop. It stopped you from just getting through every day and having a complete change, realizing, oh, it doesn't have to be this way. We could
Yeah.
run our lives in a completely different way and it would work.
And it also opened my eyes. Like I always had this idea of what my husband's job looked like. And I would get so frustrated when he hadn't sent the email to the insurance company for X, Y, and Z, you know? And when I saw it sort of firsthand and what he had to deal with, I had far more compassion and understanding for what he was doing. And I think he had far more compassion and understanding for me. And actually, one day we went for a walk and he's like, I don't know how you did it all this time on your own. And I said, I don't know how you've managed all this time on your own. So
Oh
it was
man.
quite a realization for us. And now, so he works from home 2 or 3 times a week and fetch kids from school and we drop the kids off together. So like the load is shared quite a lot more equally than what it was before. Um, but now like we also hit a change, and I think that that was sort of one of the things that bobbled me this week because he's resigned from his current job and is going to another, and they are required to be in the office.
Okay.
So
It's a new season and we've got to figure out how that works.
yeah.
So you've mentioned like the aspect of time blindness a couple of times. How have you found any tools or anything that has helped you kind of manage that a bit better?
Well, it was our sessions together that made me realize that I was very time blind. And my brother-in-law actually explained to me, and he said, like, you don't see time this way. You see time as one thing happens, then the next thing happens, then the next thing happens. So you can't see what's behind the thing that you are currently with, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So then, like, planning and prepping for something that's going to happen is difficult. So something that you taught me is that I often don't allocate time to certain tasks that I do. And that then makes me run late. So for instance, the one thing that we did was sort of how am I spending my time? And you identified that I didn't even add in showering, I didn't add in eating or prepping meals, I didn't add in like transport between home and the office. So that was sort of the reason why I was always half an hour late. And I couldn't see that for myself.
You were setting yourself up for failure and not even realizing, and then getting
Exactly.
upset with yourself when it was bound to happen.
Remember like driving to work and saying, you're a stupid idiot. I mean, like, really, this is so unprofessional. And it's that negative self talk that really gets you down. And I think I have learned how to have a little bit of grace
Some.
while developing the skill that I need. We were talking about ADHD, and my cousin actually said, okay, so you were diagnosed when you were, what, 33? And that was about 5 years ago, and you've been on meds. So you've become aware that time management is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So you can only, once you're aware of something, you can only work on it. So she
Yes.
said, like, your neurotypicals, they've been working on the skill for 33 years
Mm.
and you've only become aware of the skill 33 years in, and you've been working on it for 5 years, but you're expecting to do it like everyone else. And that sort of shifted my thoughts, and I was like, okay, so I need to just work on it a little bit longer to
Progress,
then be
not
able to share
perfection.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Aiming
it's like,
for like good, not aiming for perfect, I think is a good step because no one's perfect.
yeah.
Yeah, just that little bit of progress every day is something that I try to strive for.
Yeah, so I think that's you asked me about a tool that I use. So I think
Mm-hmm.
like backtracking. So for instance, if the appointment is at 2, I will go onto Google Maps and I will say, okay, from my house to that place, it's going to take me 20 minutes. So therefore I have to leave by 1:30. If I need to shower before that, I need half an hour. So like a backtrack. And
I do the
sometimes it
same
works
thing.
and sometimes try down. So like it's too much for me to keep in my head.
Yes.
So I actually write down,
And then do you put
okay, so
timers
this is
on?
I don't, which is probably the next step.
From like a brain dumping point of view, if you do like removing things from having to remember it and putting it on paper, I like to set alarms so I don't have to remember that time to go as well. That's really helped me.
Mm.
It's all these tools
Some,
that we can figure out.
something that my husband has done, and I did it, but then it changed when my car went in for a service. So I set my car clock 5 minutes too fast so that at least
Okay.
I had that like 5 minute buffer. Because then I
Yeah,
look at it, I'm like, oh God, I have to be there. And my husband did it with clocks in the house. So all the clocks in our house are different times,
that's so funny.
but it will be like
But
2
clever. It
or
gives you
5.
that buffer. You know, I think
But
if
he,
my husband caught on to that, he would make every clock in our house 5 minutes later because my anxiety makes me early for everything. He
yeah,
would want me to like not be there that early. So he would make things later. The
so
fact
that's
that you
my,
and I can meet up is amazing because I would be there 10 minutes earlier. You would be there 10 minutes later. How would we get anything done? But we still get it done. It's impressive. So
my
funny.
husband not 10 minutes early, then he's late. And like that it's been a big thing. And I remember when we started dating, we had a big falling out because of that. And he's like, you're late. You are disrespecting my time. You're
Mhm.
disrespecting me by not being on time. And I think that that has almost drilled into me like it's professional to be on time and you're unprofessional if you're not on time. And I think I really have a huge, it impacts me quite badly, the negative self-talk
Yeah.
that comes along with all the things that I'm struggling with or the skills that I haven't developed yet.
I love that yet because
Yeah.
yeah, it's a work in progress and like your sister, I think sister-in-law said, like we can't be expected to learn these new really difficult executive functions that people have
Mm.
had 30 years to figure out. So I love that you're giving yourself grace and when you're having those negative thoughts, you know what I like doing is thinking, would I say these words to my daughter or my son
Mm.
or my sister? And if I wouldn't, then that's not the right thing for me to be saying to myself. And that kind of has been a nice
Yeah.
tool for self talk because that can spiral so quickly.
Uh, so that's quite interesting. I used that in a therapy. My daughter happened to be there. And I said, oh, if this isn't something that you would say to your best friend, then you shouldn't say it to yourself. So
Hmm.
she pipes up and she says, Mom, I think you need to take your own medicine.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
listen to your own. Like, whoa, okay. Thanks for the check.
They're so honest. Kids are so honest. So tell me a bit about how occupational therapy has impacted your feelings on neurodiversity and how it can help neurodiversity. For us, it
Something
was the
that,
first route that we actually used. So it was the first thing, I don't know if it's just South African schools
Mhm.
that kind of push OT as soon as there's something not quite right. They generally send kids for an occupational therapy assessment, which I love. I love. Here in California, it's not that standard like picking up something and then they go to OT. But for us, it was always the first line. And I feel like it gave us, specifically with my son, so much information about what would help him and tools and advice about how to kind of build that like framework of who that person was, who that person is, and how we can help them. Is that something that resonates with you, that you can give people sort of guidelines about who that person is, their personality, and what they need?
So I think something that is important to understand or to remember is that with neurodiversity, regardless of what you do, whether you go the medication route or the therapy route or what have you, you are not going to change that brain physically. So, like, there are certain things that will impact it or will improve the way that it works, but you are not going to like replace a neurodiverse brain with a neurotypical brain. And that's not what we want to do. So, from an OT perspective, we want to give you strategies and skills and develop the skills that necessary for you to be able to manage things from a functional perspective. Things
I love
like,
the analogy of using medication or having tools, OT tools, of using that analogy of putting glasses on. It's not going to make you
yeah,
see, it's not going to make your eyes see, but the glasses are going to be a tool that you can use to help your vision. I think that's
yeah.
an amazing way to explain it to kids as well.
There's an OT in Australia. Her name is Rhiannon Crisp, and she talks about occupation as medicine. And there are specific occupations that you can perform and engage in to help you out. So, like, for instance, I use exercise and I know and I can physically feel a shift in my thoughts and in my brain and how things work and in my mood if I have exercise versus if I don't have exercise. And I think that we need to shift the idea of, okay, you've got a neurodiverse brain, you're supposed to be on meds, and that's the only thing that works. I
It's
think we
a
can
tool,
use
it's not the
occupation.
only.
Yeah, yes. And I think we can use occupations, we can use supplements. Something that I've been using is magnesium because that has been done that it helps you to create or form the neurotransmitters in your brain.
Okay.
So it's sort of the building. It helps with the building blocks of those neurotransmitters. Um, it's also the things. So occupations are the things that you do on a daily basis. So, like, how are you creating your routines to help you manage your time? What routines are you putting in place to help you with good sleep hygiene? Suggest specific activities that can really assist and help to make you more focused or help you to maintain your focus when you're studying. So it's OT can honestly give you some strategy to support day to day.
Okay. And from like a regulation point of view, how does
Um,
OT help you build your skills in that way?
your senses are your first engagement in your world. So
Mm-hmm.
if you are unable to, or if you are struggling to process your world from a sensory perspective, you will have difficulty in developing and forming skills and learning different activities.
Okay. So that would be the first thing you would look at. If you're struggling with anything, you would look at your integration first.
So you would look at how you are integrating things from a sensory perspective.
Okay.
And you look at it from two different ways. So you have discrimination, which is like a frequency knob on a radio. So are you receiving clear messages from your body or are they a little bit fuzzy?
Okay.
And then you also look at it from a regulation or a reactivity point of view. So how are you able to filter out the unimportant sensory information from your world and focus on the important sensory information from your world? Can you filter it out or does everything drag your attention? So, for instance, like I'm quite auditory defensive. So I pick up sounds quite easily in my environment. And if I've had quite a busy day from a therapy point of view, or if we have been at the shops for a prolonged period of time, just the noise and the extra auditory demand, if I can explain it like that, that makes me quite dysregulated. And often, if I'm dysregulated, I get quite angry. So I am snappy. I shout more frequently. I'm not as nice a person to be around. And then I start seeing these kinds of behaviors in myself. And like it happened today. And I think it was the stress of sort of having this podcast recording. And then I was snappy with the kids, and then I notice it. And
Mhm.
because I have a bit of an awareness, I can say, oh, guys, I'm sorry that I behaved that way. This is the reason why. And it's not
Okay.
an excuse. I can explain it like, I was feeling overwhelmed
Mhm.
and that made me snap at you.
What would you recommend for adults that are looking for guidance in getting that information for themselves? Is that something, do you see adults or do you just, in your practice, you see children?
Yeah, in my practice, I see children, so I feel a little
Okay.
bit more comfortable explaining things from a pediatric or a child perspective. But
Okay.
there are therapists who do work with adults.
Okay.
And I think that it is like I'm actually considering going to an OT for myself
Yeah.
because I think I'd understand things from a sensory perspective better.
Yeah.
Um,
When you know
everyone has
better,
a
you can do better. So it's helped us so much with my kids, and they're such different human beings. And they have such
mm,
sensory needs. They're so different. If I had that information for myself, I think that would help me with my regulation, with my day-to-day needs. And so I kind of wish that I had seen an OT when I was younger.
mhm.
Yeah, I do. I feel left out
I
now.
I think that Mona de la Hook, she is a psychologist in the States. And
Okay.
she talks about, she doesn't believe in good or bad behavior, but she talks about being curious about behavior. And if we are curious, we can ask questions around specific behaviors. And then we can understand where those behaviors are coming from. So, for instance, like my snapping at my kids, if I wasn't curious about why am I snapping? What am I doing? I might not then be able to pick up, oh, hang on, that's when I am dysregulated. And what makes me dysregulated? What happened in the day that, sort of increased my stress or made me feel like I wasn't in control?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And, um, and like I've noticed with my kids, they'll get in the car and they'll say, oh, do you have anything to eat? Because I'm going to get hangry.
We also use that. And you don't want to reach
I
that
tend
point of no return where you kind of over it. It's very hard to get them to eat when they're kind of over that hangry stage. So you want to preempt it and eat for self-care, I guess, because yeah, your body doesn't need to be at that stage.
I think learning sort of what those signs are from a sense
Mhm.
perspective too. So, what does it look like just before you're getting to that dysregulated state where it will fall down and it's a meltdown? Like an analogy that I use with parents, it's like a Coke bottle. So, there are certain things that will shake that Coke bottle up. For me, it's noise. Sometimes it's touch. So, like, I am quite an affectionate person, but when you come and are in my space, it's just too much. Um, for some other children, it might be like visual input. So we are staring at the board and we're required to write things down, and people are moving around me, and there's colorful artwork on the walls. And so, from a school perspective, from a multisensory environment perspective, that Coke bottle can be shaken up quite a bit. And often in a school environment or a work environment, we're able to hold it together because the expectations are set and there's rules.
Mhm.
And from a societal perspective, you try and fit in.
Yeah.
So you hold it together. That Coke bottle then explodes when you start releasing it when you get home or when you hop in the car to drive back home from
With
work.
that safe person who's generally us. Yeah. Oh man, that's tough. The order of things that I would prefer to get home and get homework smashed out and done. But it doesn't work for my kids. They need time to regulate, compress, have a snack, and then do homework. So sometimes it's not about what you want to do. It's like, well, how is this going to work better for everyone? And yeah, you've kind of be flexible. I think that's the thing I've learned
And also,
the most this year.
yeah, you've you have become curious about certain behaviors that
Hmm.
will make the shift. So
Yeah.
you've seen that it doesn't work, right? So then you've put different things in place. And I think moms are really good at understanding and identifying what isn't working with their kids and shifting it and
Yeah.
adjusting.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that is sort of another thing on the list that moms are almost like responsible for,
Everyone's
which is,
moods.
and often if I'm feeling stressed out, I will say like, guys, I'm not the keeper of the emotional like things in the house. Yeah, please.
And I guess that goes back to the curiosity of yourself and knowing
Mm.
like what's too much for us to take on, because my biggest responsibility is to make sure I'm regulated, I'm calm, I am not overstimulated in any way when I'm with the kids so that I can take that on. And I think that's also a big shift. Instead of, everything just needs to be done and they need to just fit in, and nope, I need to focus on me, and that will help the kids feel that calm energy, and they'll actually feed off that rather than we're late, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to run to this class and that after school sport. And I've calmed down our our schedule a lot, and the kids are feeling it and appreciating it.
Well, the thing is, I think it's difficult because we are in that society where it's busy, busy, busy is more, like
Hmm.
more is more, and I remember having a chat to my sister, and her kids are in a lot of extramurals. I just said to her, I was like, oh gosh, I don't know if I could do that. So
Yeah.
she's like, yeah, but you get left behind. Your kids are going to be left behind. And I was like, then my kids are going to be left behind because I can't cope with that. And I
Hmm.
mean, that was also something that I was thinking about when you spoke about tools. One of the things that is sort of a rule for our home is it's one thing on a weekend. I can't do more. So
We do
if
the
there's a
same
birthday
thing.
party,
Yeah.
like I can't do more than that because I'm too dysregulated or I can't cope with the interaction. And then I'm not enough person to be around.
And that's awesome. We're understanding what we need and we're making time for it. And I think that's such an incredible thing to do, rather than comparing ourselves and having FOMO and expecting to do what other people do just because they do it. Figuring out what works for us. I think that is ideal. Yeah.
I think that it's very difficult to do in the society that we're in, where busyness is like a badge of honor. And there's also that sort of, from a neurodiversity perspective, that fitting in, right? And if
Hmm.
you aren't fitting in, and like if you are saying no to things, then you worried, oh, well, is my no going to mean that I'm not going to be invited next time? But if I say yes, then I'm going to be stressed out. So it's that sort of juggle of what is right for you. And I
Yeah.
think in our current society, have that internal introspective where you know what's right for you, you know what and it. And that sort of like gut feel. So when you get the invite, you will know exactly what. But
You'll
I
know what
think
to do.
sometimes we push that gut feel away and
I'm seeing a
we
lot
don't.
of tendencies for people pleasing with women. And I know every ADHD person is different and has different aspects of it and looks different. And, it's not like there's one box and we all look the same. But I'm seeing a lot of people pleasing as like a reaction of just trying to make everything okay as part of neurodiversity with myself, and I've seen it with other people in my life as well. Do you resonate with people pleasing, or is that not something that you worry with? Do you struggle
That
to
is
say
definitely.
no, Ruth?
What do you think, Michelle? No, I definitely know. And I think that it's also linked to um, sort of the fit-in culture. So like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be left out, but I
Yeah.
don't fit in either. Does that make sense? So I will sort of cut pieces off of myself or not listen to parts of me saying absolutely no to fit in because I don't want to be left out. Um, and that also sort of links to the feeling of not being good enough.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder
Uh,
how much of that is linked to like our childhood and not being good enough because school is meant for neurotypical kids and not neurodiverse kids. So we had to work so much harder to fit in, to be accepted, I wonder, it would
mm,
be interesting to do a dive through the psychology of that. But this is
yeah.
probably for another day because we've already reached our time limit. So I want to know if you have any advice for mums out there that think they might be neurodiverse and or might think that they have sensory difficulties. Where would you suggest that they go?
I would suggest reaching out.
Mhm.
If you do suspect that you are neurodiverse, have ADHD or autism, I would encourage getting a diagnosis. And it's not because we want to label things or box you or, sort of put you in a little corner. I think it's the freeing part of it is so important, where you stop blaming yourself for certain things that aren't a you thing. Um, and
What is one thing that you would see as your superpower with being neurodiverse?
I think something that links to work. So with being an OT, I feel like we have to hold quite a lot of information in our heads when we are treating kids and when we are seeing, people in therapy. From a therapeutic point of view, often we will follow the child's lead. And as a result, we can have an idea or a plan of what we want to do. But if the child follows something different, needing to be adaptable and adjustable, and with holding so much information, I can quickly come up with something else that relates to that child that needs to be and quickly make a plan. You
Okay.
know,
You've seen the positives in it and seen how that can be your
yeah.
strength.
So I think with an ADHD brain, you can have like the traits are almost like a flip side of each coin. So they can be positives, and at the same
Yes.
time, they can be,
Hyperactive, high energy. Like, I get it. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. But
yeah.
I'm glad you're focusing on that. And are we starting to have really great resources out there on Instagram, podcasts that are changing the stigma and creating such a positive environment for women with ADHD and women that are neurodiverse. So I'm excited for the future. And would you be able to tell people how to get in touch with you if they wanted more information about your practice and how you work? Do you do virtual visits?
So I can do virtual visits within South Africa.
If they want some OT assistance, we'd be able to link your information in the show notes and they'll be able to get in touch with you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Awesome.
I've got an Instagram page.
Okay, so I'll share the Instagram as well. And maybe if you have questions, you can pop them to Ruth on her Instagram. And thank you so much for giving your time. I
Yeah,
really
sure.
appreciate you. I've loved our conversations in the past and how we've gone through this whole journey together. So we're going to say goodbye.
Thanks so much.
You just finished an episode of the Burnout Recovery Club, and I am so glad that you are here and part of this very special mom tribe. And remember to like and share this episode so that we can reach more moms just like you. Just a reminder that this podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. please contact a medical professional for treatment and diagnosis or any help, questions, or frustrations that you are having. And remember, you are so much more than just a mom.